Greetings, friends. Well, it's time to look at the penultimate movie for Horror Month 2016. This is my look at 2010's The Wolfman. In 1891, Ben Talbot is killed by a fierce creature in the Blackmore woods. Gwen Conlife, Ben's fiancée, has contacted his brother Lawrence, a Shakespearean actor, saying that Ben disappeared. Lawrence returns to his family's estate in Blackmore, where he has an uneasy reunion with his estranged father, Sir John. Lawrence discovers Ben's mutilated body kept in a slaughterhouse. At the local pub, Lawrence overhears the locals discussing the killing. Many blame gypsies who are camped outside the town, while another patron claims there was a similar murder several decades earlier and a werewolf was the suspected killer. He has flashbacks as he tours his family's home that his mother, Solana, committed suicide when he was a boy. Ugh. Lawrence saw his father standing over her dead body. Afterwards, he was sent to an insane asylum in London for having to suffer from delusions. Lawrence visits the gypsies during a full moon. The local townspeople raid the camp to confiscate a dancing bear they believe is a killer, but a werewolf attacks the camp and bites Lawrence before being chased away by local hunters. A gypsy woman named Maleva sutures his neck wounds, but his daughter insists that now cursed Lawrence should be killed before he destroys other lives. Maleva refuses, saying he is still a man and that only a loved one can release him. Lawrence recovers unnaturally quickly and develops heightened vitality and senses. His father's servant, Singh, shows Lawrence a set of silver bullets and implies that something monstrous is loose in Blackmore. Inspector Alberline arrives to investigate the recent killings and suspects Lawrence is responsible based on his mental history and portrayals of mentally ill characters. Lawrence sends Gwen away to London for her own safety. He allows his father to his mother's crypt, where Sir John locks himself in a room alone as he gives a cryptic warning to Lawrence. Lawrence then undergoes a painful transformation into the Wolfman before running off into the woods and killing the hunters stationed there. Alberline the police arrests now human Lawrence. Taken to the same asylum he was committed to as a child, Lawrence is subjected to torturous treatments by Dr. Hoeniger. I guess I pronounced his last name anyway. Sir John visits Lawrence and explains that many years before, while hunting in India, he was bitten by a feral boy infected with lycanthropy. Lawrence realizes his father, as a werewolf, killed his mother and his brother. Dun dun dun. Knowing that Lawrence would never be believed, he confesses before leaving his son at the asylum permanently. Dr. Hoeniger conducts an evening lecture with Lawrence as a case study and assures Lawrence that he is only a werewolf in his imagination, seeking to prove it by putting him on display during the full moon. As the moonlight streams through the window, Lawrence transforms into the Wolfman and goes on a rampage throughout the lecture hall in London, with Aberline in pursuit. The next day, now human Lawrence visits Gwen's antique shop for help. They realize they are falling in love and share a passionate kiss. Aberline arrives and searches the shop, but Lawrence has already escaped to Blackmore. Lawrence arrives at Talbot Hall and finds Singh's mutilated body. He loads the gun with Singh's silver bullets, but when he attempts to shoot his father, he learns that Sir John had removed the powder from the cartridges years ago. The Talbots fight, transforming into werewolves when the full moon rises and setting Talbot Hall on fire. Lawrence kills his father as Gwen and Alberline arrive. Alberline attempts to shoot the Wolfman, but is bitten instead. Gwen disrupts the shot and flees with Alberline's revolver. The Wolfman pursues Gwen and traps her above a gorge. She pleads with Lawrence, whose consciousness recognizes her. As he hesitates, the hunters approach, distracting Wolfman long enough for Gwen to shoot him. Lawrence reverts to human form, thanking Gwen for setting him free and dies in her arms. Alberline arrives with the hunters, but as he looks at the moon, he realizes his inevitable fate. As Talbot Hall burns in the distance, a howl is heard in the distance. Eesh, well, that's some pretty heavy stuff, huh? Anyway, let's look at some production elements of this movie. In March 2006, Universal Pictures announced the remake of The Wolfman with actor Benicio del Toro, a fan of the original and collector of Wolfman memorabilia, in the lead role. Screenwriter Andrew Kevin Walker was attached to the screenplay, developing the original film's story to include additional characters as well as plot points that would take advantage of modern visual effects. Del Toro also looked towards Werewolf of London and The Curse of the Werewolf for inspiration. In February 2007, director Mark Romanek was attached to the helm of The Wolfman. Romanek's original vision was to infuse a balance of cinema in a popcorn movie scenario, stating, When there's a certain amount of money involved, these things make studios and producers a little nervous. They don't necessarily understand it or feel that the balance will swing too far to something esoteric, and we could never come to an agreement on the right balance of that type of thing. Ultimately, it made more sense for them to find a director that was going to fulfill their idea of the film that they wanted, and we just sort of parted ways. In January 2008, Romanek left the project because of creative differences. Brett Ratner emerged as a frontrunner to replace Romanek. The studio also met Frank Darabont, James Mangold, and Joe Johnston. They were also interested in Bill Condon, and Martin Campbell was interested. Johnston was hired to direct on February 3, 2008, and the film's shooting schedule and budget remained as intended. Johnston hired David Self to rewrite the script. Shooting took place from March 3rd to June 23rd, 2008 in Britain. At the time, the film was budgeted at $85 million. They shot at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire, Chatsworth in Derbyshire, and Castle Combe in Wiltshire. They transformed Chatsworth House by adding weeds, dead grass, and ivy. They also shot in Lecoq in Wiltshire, a village conserved by the National Trust for Places of Historic Interest or Natural Beauty, for a day. Universal donated £5,000 to the village in return for filming in the Tithe Barn for a scene involving frozen corpses. A funeral scene was also shot beside the Temple of Ancient Virtue at Stowe House, with the temple decorated in false ivy and copious amounts of smoke/mist floating over the setting. There were also scenes filmed on Dartmoor, Devon, a fog into a quarry. Pickups of Pinewood were conducted in May 2009. Rick Baker created the makeup for the Wolfman. When he heard Universal was remaking the film, he eagerly pursued it, as both Wolfman and Frankenstein inspired him to become a makeup artist as a child. Nice. He acknowledged transforming Del Toro was not difficult because he is a hairy man. Going from Benicio to Benicio as the Wolfman isn't a really extreme difference. Like when I did An American Werewolf in London, we went from the snake man to a four-legged hound from hell, and we had a lot of room to go from the transformation to a lot of really extreme things. Here we have Benicio del Toro, who's practically the Wolfman already, to Benicio del Toro with more hair and bigger teeth. Baker and del Toro were adamant about the design resembling the makeup created by Jack Pierce for the 1941 film, where Romanek went through thousands of concept art renderings. When Johnston signed on, Baker returned to his second design, which is the finished result. The makeup took 3 hours to apply and 1 hour to remove. New pieces of latex prosthetic makeup and loose hair was applied to del Toro's face each day, while several dentures and wigs were created in case some were damaged. Baker said the transformation would likely be computer-generated, which disappointed him as he would not be involved and it felt to look unrealistic, as the animators did not have his knowledge of the design. Director Joe Johnston explained that joining the film 3 weeks before photography placed limitations on his ability to film without using CG effects. He has stated, "I recognized that there were things I was going to be able to do from the beginning to the end, and things that I had to rely on post-production for." In reference to filming Benicio del Toro's actual transformation of Wolfman, Johnston further explained, I decided to basically just shoot Benicio and distinguish where he transforms and decide in post-production what I wanted the transformation to be. That was really my main reason for using CG. It gave me so much more flexibility. In February 2009, ZBrush shard of the transformation by Baker leaked online. In addition to the film, at the 2009 Halloween Horror Nights, Universal Studios Florida added the Wolfman to the event. The cast and crew were back on location, reshooting the film on the grounds of the old Royal Navy College and Park in Greenwich over the weekends of the 22nd, 25th, and 30th to 31st of May 2009. The purpose of the reshoots was to change the way one werewolf looked in the film. Previously, it stood on 2 legs, but now it stands on 4. Also, an action scene was added between the Wolfman and the werewolf, according to second unit director Vic Armstrong. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting, if I do say so myself. Well, a pretty interesting look at the remake of The Wolfman. I give 2010's The Wolfman 3 jack-o'-lanterns out of 5. Well, join me tomorrow, which is Halloween, as we look at 2014's Dracula Untold. So, until then, see you guys.